to have a good view about who Allah is. And a lot of times, due to mistranslation or due to ignorance, a lot of times we are conditioned to think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is this vengeful, terrifying God that is always looking out to punish people. Even though we know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says about himself, Inna rahmati sabaqat ghadabi, that my mercy exceeds, supersedes, goes beyond my anger. So Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu tells us that the Prophet ﷺ says, Inna husna dhanni billah min husni al-ibadah. To think it is from one's good thought and assumption, a positive assumption about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it in itself is a good form of worship. So the question I want you guys to all think about tonight is, do you have a positive view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you think positively about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or do you have a more negative relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you might have to work through some of these things? Okay? And so as a result, the Prophet ﷺ and the Quran, they all encourage us to think good about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because when you do this, it ties into positivity. It ties into your view in life, your outlook in life. And brothers and sisters, I really think that a lot of the issues that we are seeing today, from people who have suffered personal trauma, sexual assault, injustice, they have anger issues, they have family issues, daddy issues, mother issues, spousal issues, divorce issues, resentment, and seeing all this killing, or seeing all this injustice that is happening around the world. It's very easy to go down this very dark and narrow path, a very, very sad and dangerous view, where people start asking, where is Allah in all of this? Right? Why me? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do this to me? And this is, and I really, or even just thinking about the issue of theodicy, the problem of evil. Some people not being able to reconcile from a theological perspective of how could there be evil in this world? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created evil, then He must be okay with it, then therefore how could He allow this evil to persist? And all of these sort of questions, when you're happy, alhamdulillah, and blessed and untested, you don't think about these things. But when you are tested in life and things start going wrong, that's when shaitan comes. Start planting seeds of doubt into your heart about each and every one of these things, questioning your faith, questioning who you are, questioning your responsibility, questioning why do we even have to follow these rules in Islam? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is discuss this. So the first thing that we want to have is to have a correct mindset of your viewpoint with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given everything to you and me and everything in this world, blessings that are innumerable and freely given. Freely given. And He doesn't ask us to repay Him back. But what He asks us is to use the blessings that we have justly, to use the blessings that we have correctly, and that when He asks us of something, that we do our best to meet those goals, even if we continue to stumble along the way. But you don't see that if you make one mistake, for example, or 2 mistakes, or 100 mistakes, or 1,000 mistakes, do you see anyone on earth where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes all of His blessings all of a sudden? Like, let's say, for example, someone committed murder, for example, okay? Does he suddenly, overnight, Allah takes away his sight, hearing, touch, smell, and becomes paralyzed overnight? Do you see that very often? No? Maybe a few things Allah will test someone along the way. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't come down immediately and punish the person. So sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove some blessings from your life, and He will ask you on the Day of Judgment, which is the more important thing, is, how did you use these blessings? So instead of focusing on, oh, the blessing was taken away from me, you need to say to yourself, well, how did I use those blessings when He gave it to me? And I think this is caused by a very selfish humanistic perspective in the way how we view human-to-human interaction, human-to-animal interaction, and we cannot help but apply this to human-divine interaction. We see an animal, we give it a treat, what do we expect it to do? We expect obedience, we expect it to be nice to us, we expect it to not bite us, right? You give a dog a treat, you expect the dog to be obedient to you, right? You give the horse a treat, you expect it. And so if the horse is ridiculous and uncontrollable and cannot be tamed, the rancher is going to be like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Because we think at a very give and take reciprocity kind of relationship. The issue is, a lot of people, they think about this in the way how they think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if Allah gives me, that means He's happy with me. And if Allah doesn't give me, that means He's either upset with me or shu zambi ana, or what is my sin? What did I do to deserve this? Okay? And this is, if you think about it, this is such a selfish way of thinking. That if I treat a human good, you expect reciprocity. And for you, it's like, well, I didn't deserve this, right? I treated him nicely, he didn't treat me nicely, we're done. And we apply this kind of mistaken one-to-one relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not on the equal plane. You have nothing to give back to Allah that Allah could benefit from. It is this kind of relationship, not this, but this. So when you are thinking about the way, about how Allah gives you, you cannot think of it in the way how you deal with people. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you so many blessings, and how many of you actually are able to count them? Allah tells in the Quran, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you were to count all the blessings of Allah, you would not be able to count them, right? Another aspect is that you have to remember, the mindset is that you have to believe that everything Allah has ordained is good, whether you perceive the good immediately or not. And that is very hard to understand in the grand scheme of time. In other words, a lot of times people have this negative assumption about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is because of their confusion with the sixth pillar of faith, qada wal qadar. Understanding predestination. Understanding why things happen to them. Understanding why bad things have happened to good people. Understanding why there's evil in this world. Understanding why is there suffering in this world. See, I'm going to get right to the point. Nobody has a problem with predestination when something good goes their way. No one has a problem with that. You get a raise, a salary bump. Is there anyone that comes and complains and says, I don't deserve this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already preordained this, then therefore I don't deserve the salary bump? Said no one ever. It's usually when something bad happens to them, it's usually when something doesn't go their way, or perhaps they don't want to be held responsible for something that they have done, then that's when they invoke the card of al-qadar. It's not fair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made me do it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew I was going to be in this situation. It's not fair that I was put in this situation. I want you to think about how selfish that is. That when Allah ordains and everything goes your way, no one's complaining. But only when something doesn't go your way, then people start complaining. How very selfish. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Prophet ﷺ, He teaches us that as a believer, you have to believe that everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordains for you, even if the immediate consequence for you right now seems negative, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordains everything good for the believer. عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ الْأَمْرَ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ. Strange is the affair of the believer. Everything that Allah ordains is good. If something good happens to them, they thank Allah. If something negative happens to them, they are patient. So just by virtue of you being a believer, وَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدِ, you have to believe that everything, even if you lose something right now, even if you lose your job, even if something terrible happens, you might say, well, this is terrible. How can you explain this away and say this is good? Good is not at your timeline and how you perceive it to be. Good is in the eyes of Allah, in the grand scheme of everything that He has ordained, that there is some greater good even if you don't understand that. So for example, we see suffering in the world. We see people being oppressed. We see people losing their lives. We see children innocent. And we sit down and we sometimes think, you know, how difficult this is, how unfair this is, what do they do to deserve this? And we don't realize that everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained in this world, everything that He has ordained, okay, there is some eventual good that comes up. Simple question. Why did Allah create Satan? Satan, the greatest causer of all fitan and the greatest causer and instigator of evil. Why did Allah create Satan in the first place? Why couldn't He just get rid of Satan? And the scholars have talked about this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Satan not because, like in Christianity, Satan is a equal footing challenger against God. You've got God on one side and then you've got the army of Satan on the other side. No. Satan is never at the same footing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Satan, Iblis, is still a creation of Allah and he's still under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command and he still has to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether he likes it or not. But yet the ulama have said that the reason Satan exists is because Satan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates everything in pairs. If there is life, then there must be what? Death. If there is justice, then there shall be injustice. That if there is a voice of good, there will also be a voice of evil. That if there is life, then there shall also be a taking of life. The only thing that does not have an opposite or a pair is who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you want to accept the good, you have to also accept the bad that comes with it. And that's why even the ulama, they said that out of respect, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates good and He creates evil. But out of respect, even the scholars, they used to say, وَالْخَيْرُ the Prophet said, وَالْخَيْرُ بِيَدَيْكَ وَالشَّرُّ لَيْسَ إِلَيْكَ. Oh Allah, the good is in your hands and we do not attribute the evil to you. It's not that Allah didn't create evil, it's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates evil by virtue of creating good. So these people that suffer, all the suffering that we're having in this world, at the end of the day, you have to understand no matter how much suffering that goes on, that there is going to be something better. That there is going to be a reward for them. That despite this gruesome, evil ending that they suffered, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them something better than whatever they have endured in this world. In another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ tells us, لا تتهم الله. Do not accuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another translation for you guys to understand, it would mean to put God on trial. Yani, don't put God on trial. For what? For the things that He has ordained for you. So there are a couple of things in this world. We've got things in this world that we can classify them as things that you have control over and things that happen inside of you that you have no control over, and there's also things that happen outside of you that have no control over as well. So what are these things that are happening outside of your body that you have no control over? The weather, natural disasters, earthquake, floods, hurricanes. Do you have control over that? No. Then there are things that are happening inside of you that you have no control over, inside of your body, such as what? breathing. The running joke is like, no one has ever passed away from holding their breath. Right? Can you control your heartbeat? You cannot control these. Can you stop your digestion? There's things inside of you that you have no control over. And then there are things that are happening within inside of you that you have control over. Your actions, your thoughts, your sayings. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is that those that you have control over, your actions, your thoughts, your words, you are held accountable for that. And for those things that you have no control over it, you are held accountable for the response that you give to those things. You suffer a major health catastrophe, Allah is going to hold you accountable for the thing for that thing in the response that you gave to it. Are you patient, or are you going to explode and say, this is unfair, right? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he tells us that the Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith Qudsi, يَقُولُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي. I am the way how my servant perceives me to be. If he perceives me, إِن ظَنَّ بِي خَيْرًا فَلَهُ وَإِن ظَنَّ بِي شَرًّا فَلَهُ. If he perceives me to be good, then I am going to be good. And if he perceives me to be evil, then I'm going to be evil. It doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be at your bend and your will, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do everything that you want. That if you think of him good, he's going to be good. It means that, do you think good about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control? Do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to forgive you? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has infinite mercy? Or do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is this vengeful God that needs to be propitiated over and over again due to some mistake that you did? How do you view Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And so, what are some of the instances that we should practice husn dhann billah? How do we practice thinking good about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? First thing is, we have to think about the practice of the deen. Sometimes we have sisters, we have brothers, we have youth, we have elderly. They struggle in some things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them. They struggle. Insert whatever mas'ala, whatever issue that they have. And then sometimes they'll say, well, what is the point of this? وش الفائدة? What is the point of this? Why do I have to wear hijab? Why do we have to do salah? Why do we have to get up for fajr? Why do we have to go do hajj? Why do we need to go suffer and go fast and no food and water for a whole month of Ramadan? That question, that type of thinking shows that, do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would legislate something for you to do that was pointless or stupid? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell you to do something that was pointless? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say, do something, and then He would come back and then be like, aha, I got you, I knew you're never going to be able to do it, but I still did it to make you do it. No. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never burden you with something you cannot handle. Everything that Islam commands people to do, all the fard, all the wajib, and all the sunnah, as well as the stuff that Islam commands you to stay away from, it means that from the beginning of time until the end of time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that it is part of the human condition. The human enterprise is able to handle this. Otherwise, He would not have legislated, He would not have prescribed something, nor would He have proscribed something and forbade you from doing it. Because it is within your ability, it is within your qudra, it is within your taqah, your ability to handle it. You might not have reached that level. You might not have reached the level of, Ramadan is getting easier. Yes, you might not have reached it, right? But does it mean it's worthless? Does it mean it's pointless? And so, when we practice our deen, Not everything that we fail to perceive its immediate benefit means there's no benefit, or that perhaps there's no point to it. We have to be very careful about this. You know, some people, I'll give you an example. They said, what is the point of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if a fly falls into the cup, then you should dip the fly fully into the cup of water? That's disgusting. Why would Islam tell us to do something disgusting? And later on, science and the Prophet ﷺ himself explains. First of all, you're thinking about they're living in a desert, so water is scarce. If you have a cup of water and there's a fly fall in and you're in the desert, are you going to throw all the water away? Of course not. But what is he saying? He's trying to teach us, the Prophet ﷺ is trying to teach us that there is the certain species of fly, that on one wing there is the poison or the disease, and on the other wing there has a cure on it. But the Prophet ﷺ Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not tell us the wisdom in everything. And we as humans are not always bound to have to understand everything in its entirety in order to understand that there's something good from it. I'll give you an example. Daheen or atiq. If right now, if I gave one of you the keys to give me a nice car. Toyota? Someone say Toyota? Something better than BMW. Get Tesla. Huh? Ferrari, thank you. Maybach. I come to you right now and I say, اتفضل مفتاح السيارة لك. No strings attached. Keys of the car to you. Is anyone going to sit here and say, no. I need to understand everything how this car works in order for me to believe that it's worth my time? No one is going to say that. Why? Because you recognize that, I don't understand everything about it, but I have a pretty good feeling that this is a good car. In the same way, when the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to do something, that itself should give you enough proof that there's something good in it, even if you don't perceive all the good in it. Allah tells us, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want difficulty for you. The reason why Islam has said do this and don't do this is not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a lot of non-believers will say, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just controlling, and because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, is just trying to make you do all these rituals that have no meaning. And people even say that about salah sometimes. Salah, going up, going down. I prayed in my heart. I was watching DJ Khalid one time. And for those of you who don't know who he is, no problem. You're not losing anything. Palestinian brother who's into music. He said, I pray 50 times a day. I was like, mashallah, that's good. But the way how he explained it was like he's praying in his heart. And that's the thing, brothers and sisters. Some people, they'll say, Islam is what's in the heart. It's not the action. I'm going to give you a newsflash. You are not spirit. You are flesh and spirit. Okay? So, the salah is both physical and spiritual. Just because you didn't find or realize the benefit in the physical, it doesn't mean you can remove the physical part of salah and just pray in your heart. You are both composed of flesh and spirit. Everything that Islam tells you to do, from the bodily, the perfunctory that you think is perfunctory, they all have a benefit to your physical body, and they also have a benefit to your spirit. It's not just harakat, it's not actions. There is a wisdom to it. At times of difficulty, it is the Prophet ﷺ tells us in the Hijrah story that as he was leaving with Abu Bakr and going and fleeing for their lives, and they went into the cave, and Abu Bakr said, if someone looked at their feet, لَأَبْصَرْنَا, then they would have seen us. Abu Bakr was so scared that the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? Ya Aba Bakr, ma dhannuka bi ithnaini Allahu thalithuhuma. O Abu Bakr, what is your assumption? What is your thought with the two of us where the third is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When you are at a time of difficulty, you have to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees, notices, and is there for you. Even if you think that Allah has abandoned you. Sometimes you will be put in situations in your life where you realize that there's no other way for you to run except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعَلَى الثَّلَاثَةِ الَّذِينَ خُلِّفُوا. And for those three people who stayed behind in the battle of Tabuk, they had no excuses. They just didn't want to go, and they kept delaying until they missed the entire expedition. حَتَّى إِذَا ضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ وَظَنُّوا أَلَّا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ. Those three individuals who stayed behind, they knew they were guilty. They knew they lapsed, and they didn't go on this expedition with the Prophet ﷺ until the whole world and their existence became so constricted. وَظَنُّوا أَلَّا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ. And they realized, and they thought that there is no way of turning except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person can only go so far to think, I don't need this, I don't care, I can do whatever I want. Yes, you can keep thinking that until one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will humble you to realize that you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than Allah needs you. Sometimes, brothers and sisters, a person will say, brother, you don't know what I have been through. You don't know the difficulties that I have been through. Agreed. From a psychological perspective, it is actually quite rude to tell someone that you know exactly how they feel. You don't. They will say, I've had this musibah, أصابت لي هذه مصيبة وهذه ومات فلان وقتل فلان and I lost my child and this person died and I went to the hospital and I got into a car accident. All of these things coming one after the other on top of each other. They will start saying, what did I do wrong? They will start asking, what did I do to deserve this? People think like this. What did I do to deserve this? Why is the whole universe against me? And let's be real. Even on social media, there's a famous 3-letter phrase, okay, that young people say. It's very vulgar, but I'll just say the 3 initials, FML. Something bad happens to them, something stupid, coffee spilled, FML. My life, right? You can guess the first word. Yani subhanallah, some musibah, some small thing happens to you, ala tool, immediately, my life is ruined. Ya lahwi, ya lahwiti min hayu'ishni. My father died, who's going to feed me? Allah will feed you. Okay, I cannot continue anymore after this. This is it. I'm going to throw myself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control. And I'm going to give you a story about this concept here to kind of clear it up. During the battle of Uhud, the Muslims originally lost, right? At first they lost horribly. Then they heard that the Prophet ﷺ died. They put down their weapons and they sat down. And some of them fled into the mountains. And they thought that the Prophet ﷺ died. And then Anas bin Nadr is the uncle of Anas bin Malik. And he had actually missed Battle of Badr before that. For whatever reason, he couldn't make it. Legitimate udhrun shar'i, he couldn't make it. And then this time he was able to make it. And then when he was in the battle and he saw all these people depressed that the Prophet ﷺ had died, he said, "What is wrong with you?" And they said, "The messenger has died." And he said, "Mutu ala ma mata alayh." If the Prophet ﷺ died, what did he die upon? He died upon defending the truth. He died for his values. He died for his belief. Then at least struggle so that you at least die the way how he died, right? To live out your morals, right? Are you really true to your morals? And so during this time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down a verse. And I want you to listen carefully to this ayah from the Quran. Allah tells us in the Quran, إِذْ تُصْعِدُونَ وَلَا تَلْوُونَ عَلَى أَحَدٍ وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ فِي أُخْرَاكُمْ فَأَثَابَكُمْ غَمًّا بِغَمٍّ لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ. Allah tells us in the Quran here, إِذْ تُصْعِدُونَ, when you were trying to ascend the mountain. He's talking about when they initially lost. Some of these companions were running for their lives. They had suffered the defeat, the humiliation of initial defeat. إِذْ تُصْعِدُونَ, you were running into the mountains. وَلَا تَلْوُونَ عَلَى أَحَدٍ. تَلْوُونَ عَلَى أَحَدٍ means that you were trying to save yourselves to the point that you didn't look at anyone. You weren't looking at anyone or paying attention to anyone. Why were they running? Because they were afraid for their lives, because they had lost. وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ لِأُخْرَاكُمْ. And the Prophet ﷺ is calling you from behind. They didn't know that the Prophet ﷺ was not dead. They didn't see him. He was actually on a mountain somewhere else, clinging to life with 11 people with him and one woman. And no one knew that the Prophet ﷺ was actually alive. Only very few people knew he was alive. The rest thought he had died. So what did Allah do? فَأَثَابَكُمْ. So He rewarded them with one anxiety with another anxiety. فَأَثَابَكُمْ غَمًّا بِغَمٍّ. With one anxiety after the other anxiety. لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ. So that you are not going to be sad over what you have lost. Yani the initial defeat. So think about this verse for a second. When they initially lost the battle, and then they heard that the Prophet ﷺ had died, which out of these two news is worse? Both? The Prophet's death. The Prophet's death is infinitely worse than losing a battle. But the initial depression and anguish and anxiety that they suffered, and the initial humiliation that they suffered, that they initially had when they lost the battle, when they heard that the Prophet ﷺ died, what happened to the first one? It was of no consequence anymore. It meant nothing anymore to them. Because at this moment they're realizing, oh, this is a much bigger issue than losing the war now. The Prophet ﷺ died. But what happened was, after they started running into the mountains, then they saw the Prophet ﷺ. So what happened to the second anxiety attack? Did it matter anymore? No. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you one test after the other, one after the other, one that is worse than the other, than the preceding. One that keeps making you think or doubt, wondering what is going on. And the next one that comes makes you forget the previous one. Why? Because Allah wants to see your reaction, and that perhaps at the very end Allah will give you something even better that will make you realize that in the grand scheme of everything, all that has happened is nothing. Look, and a lot of times we have this idea that, brother, if you're a righteous brother, you pray, you do your fast, you do your zakah, you're a nice person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not ever do anything to you. You know what's the best story I can gonna tell you? Ayyub alayhi salam. Prophet, righteous, generous, just, fair, respected in his community, respected among the children of Israel, rich, property, farm, workers, livestock. Everything's going well, and yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes everything away from him. All his kids died, all his livestock gone, all his land taken and thieved, house falls apart, all his friends desert him, and he is with this putrid disease on his body that causes pieces of flesh to fall off, and everyone is running away from him. Did Yunus alayhi salam, Ayyub alayhi salam ever say, what did I do to deserve this? I was good, I was righteous, why am I being tested? In fact, his wife said to him in a narration, Ayyub, ask Allah to remove this from you. You are a prophet, Allah will answer your dua. Ayyub said, no, I had enjoyed the bounties of Allah for X number of years. I forgot the number. I have enjoyed the bounties of Allah non-stop for all these number of years. I am embarrassed to not at least endure this test for the same amount of years before I ask Allah to remove it. He didn't have this anger, this hatred to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this pent-up anger that how could Allah do this to me? He said, if Allah gave me all that, He can take it away. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh. Right? Sometimes you are given a financial difficulty, you lose your job. Look what the Prophet ﷺ said. In Tirmidhi, Ibn Mas'ud narrates, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من نزلت به فاقة فأنزلها بالناس لم تسد فاقته ومن نزلت به فاقة فأنزلها بالله فيوشك الله له برزق عاجل وآجل. Prophet ﷺ tells us a hadith that if a person has some sort of like financial loss or something, and they turn that loss, and instead of turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they start turning to all these people, hoping that other people will save them. Allah is telling them that they will not be able to save you in the long run. It is not your boss that gives you your check. It is not HR accounts payable or billing or whatever that comes in. It's not them that gives you your salary. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives it to you. So here the Prophet ﷺ says, but if you turn that loss and you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you more rizq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it to you even more and more and more. Sometimes, even when you lose someone, a child, someone, or a loved one, the Prophet ﷺ tells us عن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا مات ولد العبد قال الله لملائكته قبضتم ولد عبدي فيقولون نعم. قبضتم ثمرة فؤاده فيقولون نعم. فيقولون ماذا قال عبدي فيقولون حمدك واسترجع. فيقول ابنوا لعبدي بيتا في الجنة وَسَمُّوهُ بَيْتَ الْحَمْدِ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes a child away from a parent, Allah will say to His angels, did you take away the child of my servant? They will say yes. Then He will say, did you take away قَبَضْتُمْ ثَمَرَةْ فُؤَادِهِ? Did you take away the apple of his eye, the delight of his eye, the delight of his heart, basically his child? They will say yes. And then He will say, ماذا قال عبدي? What did my servant say? فيقولون حمدك واسترجع. He praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he said inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And then Allah will say in response, because of that patience of that person, because he thought good about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there is a bigger reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his child, build for him a place in Jannah, and that will be called the place of hamd. The Prophet ﷺ also tells us that when you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believe that it will be answered. Udu'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba. Make dua knowing that Allah will give it to you. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us that whenever you make a dua, Allah will accept it. 3 scenarios. Number 1, He either accepts it from you, gives it to you, or He removes a harm from you. Let's say, for example, you ask Allah for $1 million, Allah didn't give it to you. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't give you $1 million, but instead He protected you from cancer. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you something better in the next life. right? Sometimes Allah, very important point, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give you something yet because He wants you to realize that the thing that you asked for is less important than you keeping that relationship of asking Allah over and over again. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately answered your dua, are you going to ask Him again? No. So when you don't get your dua answered, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to remind you, whether I give you or I don't give you reaching out to me and asking me more and more is more important than the result if I give you or not. And that is the relationship we need to have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ also tells us, okay, that yustajabu li ahadikum ma lam ya'jal. Your dua will be answered so long as you don't rush. And then the companion said, and how does a person rush? The Prophet ﷺ says, the person says, da'awt wa da'awt, falam yastajib li. I made dua. Allah doesn't accept. That's how you rush. And that's a problem because you know why? You have to have good thought about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this also applies to tawbah, brothers and sisters. Believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will indeed forgive you. That there is no sin that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot forgive. There is no sin that you can commit that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot handle. That no matter what thing you have done, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there to forgive you. And in conclusion, brothers and sisters, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that even in death, you need to think good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا يموتن أحدكم إلا وهو يحسن الظن بالله. No one among you shall die except that you should think good about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That even if you're now leaving this world, that you know that inshallah Allah has something there for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to reward you. And that's why the scholar said, Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, he says, إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنِ أَحْسَنَ الظَّنَّ بِرَبِّهِ فَأَحْسَنَ الْعَمَلِ. If you want to have good assumption about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to also have good action. You cannot just sit around and say, I will do whatever I want to do, and then I'm going to have good assumption of Allah that He's going to forgive me. I'm going to sin, because I know Allah will forgive me. No. If you have good assumption of Allah, you also have to accompany it with what? Good action. That if you want Allah to forgive you, and you believe Allah will forgive you, you better prove it and show that you are trying your best to reach that goal. And with that, we stop here. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, shadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to improve our relationship with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He gives us the tawfiq so that we think good about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that this positive thinking will enable us to follow the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowing that there is something good that comes from it. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with this good assumption of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that He will all give us al-firdaus al-a'la. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, shadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
So if anyone has any questions on topic, inshallah. Okay.
I'm going to assume positive that everyone understood. That's why there's no questions. And that makes me really happy. When there's no su'al, that means alhamdulillah, everyone understood and now they're ready to practice. The question, if I didn't mistake, it was, is there some sort of hadith that talks about asking Allah more and more versus patience? Patience is the price of worship. That's the price tag. So patience has to accompany, okay, let's say for example I ask Allah for something and He doesn't give it to me. I need to have the mindset that Allah, oh Allah, you give me what is best for me. You need to have that first mindset. That, oh Allah, you have not given this to me. I would like it, and therefore, if it is really good for me, give it to me. But if it is not good for me, then I don't want it. That's the whole point of dua al-istikhara. That you submit yourself, and so you're not going to be upset with either outcome. So patience, brother, is required for someone when they are making that dua. And the patience is not like, I'm so angry, I don't have it. It's patience and accepting, like we said in the beginning, rida biqadarillah, to be pleased with what Allah has ordained for you. Sometimes people say like, I made dua, I said, oh Allah, give me lots and lots and lots of wealth. Allah doesn't give to me. Why doesn't Allah give to me? Let me tell you something. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give you that because He knew in His infinite knowledge that you are going to be ruined because of that money. It doesn't mean you cannot make dua. But if a person, like say for example, he comes out of college and he's working hard, he's thinking of ideas of how to become rich for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he keeps coming with ideas and making dua and making dua and making dua up until he's 80 years old and he doesn't get it. What does that mean? Allah didn't ordain it for him. But he must know that every single dua that he made for that wealth, Allah will give him better in the next life. So he will get something, but just not in this life. Right?
Barakallahu fiqh, Shaykh. Jazakallah khair. I had one real quick question as well. Is it part of a positive assumption or, the opposite of it, negative, to think that, some people think near future something bad is going to happen to me, or I don't think I'll be good, or I don't think I'll be able to make this, or they have those thoughts in their minds, just always kind of negative, to put them down. They're almost putting themselves down. How do you think we can conquer that? How do you think we can fight that?
First, first and foremost, you have to remember that everything Allah has ordained. So if it's going to come, it's going to come, like we said. And so you need to ask yourself, prepare yourself mentally, okay, something's going to come. I'm not sure what it is. Number one, if it comes, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that it happened because I can handle it. Because Allah would not put something on you that you cannot handle. That's number one. Number two is that my responsibility is to show how I react. I'm going to be accountable for my reaction to that thing, regardless of how it comes. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, "As-sabru 'inda sadmatil ula." Patience is at the first strike of the disaster. The woman, her son died, and she was wailing, and she was crying. And the Prophet ﷺ told her, "Isbiri wahtasibi," be patient and be patient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be patient with what Allah has ordained, that your child has passed. She said, "You don't know what I've been going through. Ilayka anni, go away from me." She told the Prophet ﷺ to go away, and she didn't know that was the Prophet ﷺ. Was it rude? Yes, but she didn't know. She was in a fit of rage and shock and anxiety as well as grieving. And then later on they told her, this is the Prophet ﷺ. And she came and she apologized to the Prophet ﷺ that I apologize. I didn't mean to speak to you like that way, in such a rude way. The Prophet ﷺ, and he didn't hold it over, how dare you spoke to me, warriq, how dare you speak to me like this way. I'm the Prophet. I will show you, warriq, what is real patience. Okay, you spoke to me like that. Maybe I'll make a nasty dua against you. Prophet ﷺ didn't take anything personally. Okay, despite the outrage that she said told him to get out of her face. That's basically what she said. And what did he say? As-sabru 'inda sadmatil ula. To have patience at the first strike. So you are responsible for that reaction. Why do you think the Prophet ﷺ tells us if someone, for example, passes away? Yes, the Prophet ﷺ, when his son died, he was crying. And the companion said, "Messenger of Allah, you are crying. You shed tears." He said, "Yes, the heart aches and the eyes shed tears. But we are patient with Allah. We are patient with what Allah has decided. We don't tear our clothes and scream, why did Allah take him before his time? Who's going to feed me now? Why is Allah doing this to me? This is unfair. What did the kid deserve? Why is he going through this? Why is Allah doing this to me? There's so many more evil people that need to die. Why did he get it now? This kind of thinking is very toxic. So back to the Sheikh's point, your toxic behavior of yourself, your view of yourself, I can't make it, it starts with, do you have a positive view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? Do you view that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing this to mess with you? No. You believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained this for you so that you can get some reward out of it. That there's always some sort of silver lining. I'll give you a real life example. The other day, my boss kind of pulled a trick on me. There was another group. Their role is being eliminated, okay? And for those of you who work in corporate, you know what that means. When your role gets eliminated, it doesn't sound good. But alhamdulillah, they were reoriented to another role, okay? But the role, the title is being eliminated. So I work in enterprise document management, right? Open text. And then so these people, they handle the LMS, the learning, training, etc. And so their role is being eliminated. So all the training documents and keeping the IT documents up to date, all of that stuff is being passed off to me. It's like another full-time job. I have to manage, subhanAllah, at first I was like, wow, why am I don't get paid enough for this. But subhanAllah, I immediately reminded myself, I said, subhanAllah. And so they were saying, like, you're going to have to learn this thing called DCMS, and you got to learn this thing and this. So I paused, and I said, hold on, DCMS. What does that stand for? They were like, Document Control Management System. I said, is this like a tool with Schlumberger only, or is this internally within my company, Schlumberger, or is this a third-party tool? They said, no, it's a third-party tool. I said, aha! This is good. I get to learn a new software, and I get to put another feather in my hat for my resume. That instead of seeing this as, more work, I can now say, I now am familiar with another software. It's a little bit outside of my field, but alhamdulillah, it's good. It's good for me. That in case if I ever have to go to another role of learning management systems, I can say, hey, I'm familiar with DCMS. It's all how you look at it. Do you view it as an opportunity, or do you view it as, this is just another iz'aj, this is just another inconvenience, right? Yes, tafadhal. Oh, yes.
I had a question. So when you mentioned that, you keep asking for something, but Allah Ta'ala does not, for example, grant your dua, does that mean that you stop asking and just assume that that's Allah Ta'ala's will for you, or you continue to ask?
You can do both, but you have to think that whatever has been ordained for you is for a greater good that you may or may not perceive it. So you can continue asking. It doesn't mean that asking is wrong. It just means that you don't know if Allah has or will accept it. But you will have to believe, like I said, like the Prophet ﷺ says, that as he says in the hadith, إِمَّا أَن تُعَجَّلْ لَهُ دَعْوَةً. Imma, that Allah will give it to you immediately. وَإِمَّا أَن يَدَّخِرَهَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Or Allah will give you its equivalent in the next life. So let's say you say, oh Allah, I want to be able to have, start up a company so that I can do this and this and this. Okay, and you work and you try hard and you keep. And it's not just I make dua. You work hard and you try and you think and you plan, and somehow you keep failing and failing and failing. You keep making dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you its equivalent for that dua not answered in the next life, right? And then, humans are naturally going to take a hint. Okay, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for $1 billion and you work hard in your company and you don't get $1 billion. Okay, take a hint, right? Khalas, do you accept that? Do you accept that scenario, or are you going to be angry and say, oh, this is not fair, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did this to me and I don't like it, right? Does that answer the question? You should continue to make the dua so you can get the reward in the next life. But at the same time, say you make dua and it doesn't work. Okay, khalas. Okay. Yes, there is a hadith about that. To be, we didn't mention all these things, to be very persistent in your dua, right? That when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should not say, for example, "Oh Allah, if you want to forgive me, you can forgive me." You should say, "Oh Allah, forgive me." Right? And this just shows that the way how we communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not the way how we communicate with people. By saying to Allah, "Give me this," that's not considered rude. That means you're being very direct. But when you say to a human being, "Atini hada, ad-dini hada," that's like, what is this? That's so rude, right? But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah doesn't see that as rude. Allah sees that as you are determined. Allah sees that as you are goal-oriented. Allah sees that as you are driven. You want what you want. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't see that as rude.
Yeah, at what point do you accept that something is predestined versus it's your own free will?
Okay. At what point do you decide what is something that is predestined and what is something that is free will? I will hark back to the thing that I mentioned to you about the three things that we mentioned earlier. Things that are outside of your control that you have control, that no one has control over. Things that you have no control inside of you, and things that you have control over. So think about it. Let's say you're asking for something. Do you think it's enough for someone to ask for something and not make any effort with it? Like, for example, you want to be rich and you want to be a number, you want to get on the Fortune 500 list. Okay? Is there predestination in it? Yes. But there's also free will, because you cannot just sit there and just assume that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to throw money in your face. You have to put the effort in. You have to think. You have to be smart. You have to plan. You have to invent. You have to find different ways to make that money. So the qadar of Allah, as one of the companions described it, qadarullah, the predestination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is sirrullah, is the secret of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So qadar is basically the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is outside of the time continuum. Allah is not bound by time. Huwa al-awwalu wal-akhir, wal-zahir wal-batin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not bound by time. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the beginning and the end, the consequences. We have to go by time, right? So going back to this issue of, is it really an issue of qadar or is it an issue of free will? Very simple. How much effort did you put? Okay, I will make it as simple as possible. Someone doesn't have children. You can sit here and make dua every day. Oh Allah, bless me with a child. Oh Allah, bless me with a child. Brother, you're not married. This is not an issue of, oh, this is the will of Allah. It is the will of Allah, because He's not going to give you a immaculate conception like Maryam and give you this child by a date palm. Okay? If you're not married, you can say, oh Allah, urzuqni waladan ya Rab. Urzuqni walad. Ya Shaykh, inta a'zab. You are single, you're not married. But if, let's say, for example, someone was married and they were going through, going to the doctor and seeking treatment and working and, taking the necessary means. And let's say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't ordain it after they take on it, then you accept this is the qadr of Allah. So it depends on every scenario. It depends on every single scenario. Is it really something that you have? Let me give you an example. Death. Is there any way that you could avoid it? No. This is something that you have no control over. This is something that's going to happen that's outside of your control completely. So you can sit here and make dua, oh Allah, tawil umri, make my life long, but it is decided. You will live, you could say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted that dua, I promise, okay? I promise to end it with this question. Okay, you can say, oh Allah, extend my life. And you know what, maybe because you had made all this dua, Allah originally was going to take you at X number of years. I don't want to say a number to not offend anyone. Okay, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to originally take you at X number of age, but then because you've been making so much dua, you ended up living up to X number of years, even though you didn't know that occurred. So there are some things that you have control over and some things you don't have control over. Okay, that is the last question, I promise. Okay, and if you have any other questions, you can ask the Sheikh. That's why he's here, because I will be gone, and you have the Sheikh to take over, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, subhanahu wa ta'ala, la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair. We thank the Sheikh for coming all the way from Houston and enlightening us and mashallah giving us so much benefit. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase you in your knowledge and your health. Ameen. Inshallah, we hope to see you in the near future. If you can just give me 2 minutes, actually, whoever would like to go for the dinner, we have it in boxes. There's not going to be any lines. But if you'd like to encourage some of the youth here, this is going to take 2-3 minutes. We're going to pick out from all these names about 12 people. We actually have 30 tickets to the game, and we have a lot of the youth that are coming already on a weekly basis. They're already going with us, and we're going to pick from all these names. We're going to pick about 12 of them. They're going to go with us, inshallah, for the Sunday's game. So I